Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and the Reopened Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida Facebook page.
Ages help me, my son ails so. Ages, can't you see? He moves so slow. He's held up in his bed like an elder in the tribe. He cries aloud for rest, but it won't come at night. He longs for the morning when he will play again with his brothers and sisters in the field of Farmer Glen. Ages, hear me, my heart cries out. Jonathan is gone. I have no route, no path for me to follow. Holes grow bigger in my purse, though my nights fill with sorrow. My son is getting worse. If you know of a way that would make him right again, please, I beg you, don't hold it back from me, my friend.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia and I'm here with a few special guests. Returning from the previous podcast we did about Tiny Toon Adventures, how I spent my summer vacation, we have James, aka Jaimetud. Welcome back, James.
Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Wonder Woman. Go see it. It will turn feminism on its side.
Thank you. And we have ourselves a brand new guest. He is an animation reviewer. He has his own YouTube channel where he covers classic movies, modern movies, as well as looking back on various animation companies. We have AniMat, aka Matt Brunet. So welcome, Matt.
Hey everybody, I just got in, like James asked me, and I was like, hey, you know what, I had nothing to do. Okay, let's do this.
Alright, so today's podcast, we're going to be discussing about the Sullivan Bluth Studios movies. As of the time of this recording, this past week, it was the 35th anniversary of the premiere of The Secret of NIMH. I want to have a chance to look back on all the movies that were a part of this studio, and not to mention that as of the time of this recording, the Kickstarter for the Dragon's Lair movie has ended, and hopefully we'll be able to see some progress of the Dragon's Lair movie really soon. So, right before we discuss about the movies, I thought I want to know about your earliest memories of your first movie that was done by Don Bluth, or any projects that Don Bluth was involved in. So, Matt, since you're our first guest, why don't you start?
Well, I actually do have a rather surprising and funny story, because I remember a few of the Don Bluth films were actually some of my first animated films that I have ever seen. And ever since I was a child, ironically enough, I was a huge fan of two of them, which nowadays is not really looked upon well, which is Thumbelina and A Troll in Central Park. I remember me and my family used to watch that over and over again. Like, we were just kids, so it's just completely mindless entertainment. And I mean, we were kind of like the perfect age to be the target audience. And just recently I learned that when we were kids, like, we planted a tree and we actually named it Stanley.
Aw, how sweet.
But there is actually another weird thing, though, is that considering that I was born in Montreal, how I grew up was that I watched Thumbelina in English, and Troll at Central Park, for some reason, we had the VHS in French. So, like, we would watch those over and over.
Interesting.
So you mean, Mommy, do they speak French in New York?
No, we didn't even connect the dots that it was based in, like, legit in Central Park. We just know that it, like, we only, like, or at least I only knew that it was just a big city and there was this little special area that's like a forest. I didn't make the connection that it was Central Park, but nowadays, even when I go to New York City, I look at Central Park and I just call it Stanley Memorial Park.
That's amazing. Anyway, so how about you, James?
I'm proud to say that my earliest memories with Don Bluth films in particular involve The Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven. Now, the first one we did have on tape growing up, and I always remember that very interesting Pizza Hut commercial that they started out with, the one with the kid going to a birthday party. I don't know why I remember that still, but it was a good commercial. And All Dogs Go to Heaven, we did not own. We always looked at it as being a fondly remembered film. Like, it was a case of, it's Friday night and the kids want to watch a movie, so the folks go rent this, and it's like, it was good enough the first time we watched it 2 times in a row in one night. That was kind of the impact on it. And I followed Bluth's career even as a kid for a good deal after that. Even after taking somewhat of a hiatus, we won't be getting to that. Well, we will be getting to that tonight, partially for reasons. That, and I got a little bit older. At the end of the day, I still come back to a lot of his work, and I appreciate what he's done, just what he's accomplished, even as a so-called independent. And I say so-called because it seems like the early years he was very much under the thumb, but in the 90s there was definitely a shift in creative tone. Yeah, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to. So, as for me, we briefly kind of talked about this in the Amblimation Trilogy podcast, in which some of my early movies were An American Tail and with The Land Before Time, and they were all on bootlegs that my dad got me when he lived in New York and I lived in Philadelphia. This is when my parents separated. And
you mean to tell me that you have the lost animation for it?
No, unfortunately, I don't. I wish I did. That would have been so cool if I did, but I don't. Still looking for it, people. Anyway, so there's that, and yeah,
so we're in the trash bin at United Artists.
Yeah, cursed United Artists. So yeah, the American Tail was paired up with Five Will Goes West, and then Land Before Time was paired up with We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. So yeah, and also here's my embarrassing story, Matt. So around the same time that my dad got me the We're Back, the Dinosaur Story, and Land Before Time bootleg tape, that was when the Land Before Time sequel started coming out. And I was just so obsessed with the Land Before Time movie, I thought that the sequels were going to be just as good. And I bought every single VHS tape until leading up to part 6, when I just pretty much quit.
No, honestly, when I was a kid, I was kind of the same thing, actually, because not only was I a fan of, like, Thumbelina and Troll in Central Park, but I was an avid follower of the Land Before Time sequels. Like, I think we went up to, for me, I think we went up to number 7, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but, like, we went pretty far, either between 5, 6, or 7. But I remember, as a kid, I used to watch a lot of those.
Yeah.
You had a lot more patience than me. I made it up to number 5, and I was just like, that's it, I'm done.
Well, at least we ended toward the middle. Can you believe it that there's now 14 sequels?
14. It's ridiculous.
In a TV show, which wasn't half bad, but not half good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to stop and just say to yourself, just marvel at the fact that nobody asked for a 14th sequel. And yet it's still happened.
No, there's like a huge gap because after the 13th, like it immediately stopped, but then suddenly the 14th one came. Like I think it was in between 7 years.
Yeah, it was around like 7 or 8 years, and I believe Mars Girl did a hypothesis that the reason why was because Jurassic World became a big hit, so maybe they decide, hey, we need to have a kid-friendly version of Jurassic World. Let's bring back Land Before Time.
Or how about even better that long-shelved sequel to We're Back. Let's see if we can resurrect John Goodman.
Speaking of which, here's another update for you on about that. So apparently, the reason I read the book of We're Back, and we were discussing about the movie in the Ablimation Movies trilogy. So apparently, there were more books of that series, of the We're Back. Apparently there was one in which they went to Hollywood and there were celebrities, and there was like more books. I'm surprised that they didn't make more movies based off of the books, but maybe when looking back on Secret of NIMH and then, looking at the sequel that Don Bluth wasn't involved in, maybe that was for the best.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I guess we can start talking about this long series of movies because, oh man, we have a long way to go. So, yeah, James actually recommended that we start off with Banjo the Woodpile Cat, which I wasn't going to talk about it at first, but then we were talking about before we recorded that it kind of changed my mind. This is basically where Don Bluth got started after he left Disney. So, yeah, the story is pretty simple enough.
I think it was while he was still working at Disney.
Oh, really?
He was doing this in conjunction with people at Disney, and that's why, partially through production of this film, which was all financed out of his own pocket, he quit, and that was the era of the Disney defectors. A lot of those guys. Did all of those guys go work on this project?
Like most of them. Like he would get some of the people that would later be a part of it, like be a part of his integral team, like Gary Goldman and John Pomeroy. Like they were all working on a side project because a lot of people really did look up to Don Bluth because at Disney he was really climbing up the chain, like the food chain, really quick. Like ever since he got back from his Mormon mission during the late 60s and early 70s, like he got back and he was working on Robin Hood and eventually climbed up to the ranks to where he became one of the animation directors for The Rescuers. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people really did look up to him as, like some people are saying, like he would be like the next Walt Disney. Because I remember because they even mentioned in the documentary Waking Sleeping Beauty, like some people are really split about the guy. Some people thought he would be the Messiah of animation or just another Walt Disney wannabe.
Yeah, I remember that piece in the documentary where Don Hahn doing the narration saying, yeah, he thought he was the next Walt Disney.
Yep.
And I'm just like, dude, you guys built him up. You guys created this, okay? Yeah, he started working on Banjo. He split to finish it. And that's why I look at the production of this film. It's a short, but it's sort of I still sort of think of it as a film because that's what he wanted it to be from the get-go. He had plans to, once the short was completed, to extend everything, which I don't think would have worked out as well as he thought. It was a major experiment for him to try and do this on his own and get work after the fact. I remember the first time I saw Banjo. I was actually it was years ago in the early days of YouTube. I found a copy to watch in Spanish. So
Spanish, so you don't get the glory of Scatman Crothers there?
Nope. I get the joy of listening to Banjo being played by a fully grown man.
I know, I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna be my own cat in the big city. I'm a strong kitten. My God, a cat bigger than me.
It wasn't that obvious, but yeah, a grown man trying to put on a little kid's voice. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely Banjo is very important when discussing about Don Bluth's work, and maybe by today's standards it does look a little bit rough around the edges because Don Bluth was starting to have a name for himself with trying to create it, but I do think that it's charming in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have
rough around the edges. They scoured through the trash bins at the Disney studio to get snowfall cycles for that, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, if any problems that are included in Banjo, I would say it's mostly in the writing in itself, because, like, it does seem like something that would be geared a lot more towards kids, and especially with the music, where they would continue repeating of, like, what's going on with Banjo. Like, they would go on from, like, oh, Banjo the cat, he does not behave. And then there's a sad part. It's like, Banjo is sad. And then there's, like, at the end, it's like, Banjo says goodbye so he can go back home. It's like they literally had to spell it out for you.
Emotional manipulation
Banjo,
at its
the woodpile
finest.
cat is happy as can be. He's going home with good friends are to see his family. And Don Bluth after that, he's like, you know what? I think from here on out, I'm going to hire someone else to write the music. Hey, who's that guy? Who's that Williams guy who worked on the Phantom of the Phantom of the Paradise? Yeah, let's hire him.
Oh, are you talking about Paul Williams?
Oh,
yes.
yeah. Paul Williams is the one who actually did the songs?
Yeah.
Oh.
Paul Williams. That was my segue into the Secret of NIMH.
Oh,
right. Bluth wrote his own music for Banjo, and that's why I think it shows.
Oh, I see. Yeah, an emotional manipulation at its finest. Feel this way. Be happy when the protagonist is happy or else. Anyway, so, yeah, let's talk about The Secret of NIMH, because for a lot of people, they consider this to be Don Bluth's magnum opus. They say that this was the best thing that he ever did, which I can definitely see why. When you come from Banjo to Secret of NIMH, you have the tonal shifts, you have the designs of the characters, you have the dark story. You can definitely tell, you can definitely understand on why people, praise the movie even still to this day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I think one big thing that really did help in terms of the tone is mainly because of the short little animation period that it was set in. Because during the late 70s and early 80s, that was when the animation industry decided they no longer wanted to go into the same Disney route and wanted to be taken a little bit more seriously. So they decided to go follow the footsteps of Ralph Bakshi instead. And that's why during that period, you would see a lot of animated films that tried to be a little bit more adult. And this definitely is the case. It definitely is the case with The Secret of NIMH. Like, you do hear a little bit of swearing, and they decided to take itself a lot more seriously in terms of the death, some of the violence, and also just the whole tone in general. Like, like there are very few humorous scenes. Like, other than Jeremy, there isn't a lot of characters that are trying to be funny.
No, it's not.
Yeah, when you said more mature, I was thinking it's either this movie or Rock and Roll.
Yeah, Rock and Roll is another example. Twice Upon a Time is another one.
That's an interesting story all on its own.
That's another story right over there.
We can make beautiful misery together, asshole.
But, another thing that's really fascinating is that while it does stick close to the original book, there are a lot of changes that it kind of leads more into a fantasy element as opposed to relying on just electricity, which is in the original book. And also, Nicodemus was a lot younger in the book as opposed to being an old man. And, of course, there's the obvious thing that it was originally, her name was Mrs. Frisbee, but they had to change it because of legal issues with the Frisbee disc.
Yeah. And funny enough, they actually discovered that after they recorded all the dialogue. So this is major props to the sound editor, where they have to take all the different separate B's and put it onto where the F is in her name. So, and it's hardly noticeable, honestly, because it does sound like they're just saying Mrs. Brisby.
I wouldn't even have thought of that myself. Just you can watch the movie and just be like, oh, her name is Brisby. Because that's what it is. That's what they're saying.
Now, I don't have really much of a nostalgic connection for this movie because I saw this movie, way later than a lot of people. I actually saw this movie, I want to say 6 years ago. I remember that I was living in Idaho at the time, and they were renting a few movies from Netflix. And we're not referring to Netflix as in watching it on TV. We're referring to you got to click on a few DVDs and they would mail it over to you, the earlier version. I think they still do have that, but it's not as common as I see it. But anyway, one of the movies that was rented was The Secret of NIMH, and I was very fascinated by it because I heard so many people talking about this movie, and I wanted to watch it for myself. Yeah, because I was well knowledge of Don Bluth's work at the time, and I wanted to see his first feature-length film, I was really surprised by it. I was really shocked about the mature tone and the shadows and the dark storyline and the fascination of the mice who are living underground, and they use magic as a mixture of electricity and kind of like a religious overtone as well. And
they worship science, kind of.
Yeah, they worship science, kind of. And also, another thing that I kind of chuckle, but it's, kind of unintentional, but a lot of the characters' names, they all start with the letter J, so you might be thinking, oh man, I wonder if the Duggar family actually saw this movie, and maybe they were inspired to name all their 19 children after the letter J. You have Jeremy, Jenner, Justin. I do remember watching Mars Girl's review of Secret of NIMH a few years ago, and she was talking about how she felt that one of the major complaints was that a lot of the acting in the movie, especially with Mrs. Brisby, is a little bit bland. It doesn't emote a lot of emotion. You feel like something urgent should be happening, but she's kind of really low tone. And I can definitely see that, but I think that what made it up for me personally was that she was very frightful. She was concerned about everything around her. She was like a meek mouse who was staying at home, raising her kids, trying to be concerned for her family that they don't get destroyed by the farmers in moving day. And we do see a progression of the character. We see her as someone who's really meek and timid to somebody who becomes really brave and who becomes really determined to save her family at all costs. She's willing to sacrifice her life multiple times so that the people that she loves around her would be safe and secure. And I really respect her for that.
It's kind of amazing. There's one thing I'm wondering about this film now that I'm thinking back on it is when you look at Mrs. Brisby, who needs super rodents genetically enhanced in this world? Look at what she does. Look at everything that she goes through. I mean, yeah, the rats of NIMH are amazing, but she's brilliant. She's totally boss. She knows. She's a very competent character. That's one thing that I think is kind of interesting about it, or what makes it work. But there's one small flaw I noticed with her character. She's learning all this stuff about her husband helping the rats of NIMH escape long after his death, especially the deal where Nicodemus tells her, his life was extended by the NIMH experiments, so you would have gotten older than him much quicker, and he would have stayed young. Okay, I'll buy that, but I have to ask, how well did she know her husband?
That's actually a really interesting question. I mean, throughout the movie, it seemed like she was raising her kids by herself, so I don't know. Maybe he was out most of the time, or maybe the events took place maybe the kids were born and then maybe he was captured by the scientists and maybe that was when he was experimented and maybe she had no idea. I don't know. That's actually a really interesting question.
I always got the impression
she always thought that she always thought that Jonathan died. So like it could be the case, but like maybe she thought he died like much earlier when like long after he got kidnapped by NIMH, she would believe, oh, okay, well, nothing is really... It's like, okay, maybe he's just dead. She has to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, they did live in a farmhouse, so he could have been captured by a cat. He could have been killed by a tractor. So it could have been anything.
Yeah, so he got captured after the kids were born, maybe, or maybe by the time she became pregnant.
Maybe.
Either way, if that's the case, also, I think maybe very little time has passed between then and now because her kids are, well, exactly that, kids. Have you seen how quickly rodents grow?
Yeah, I mean, I believe, what is it, that rats only have like 3 or 4 year lifespan or something?
Mm-hmm.
Could be possible.
Yeah. Maybe it explains more in the book. I don't know, but yeah, that maybe they could have delved a little bit more into that. But I don't think that was the main thing. But I definitely could understand why, for some people, they would like to see a little bit more backstory into Jonathan with his family right before or right after he was captured by NIMH. In your personal opinion, do you think that this was the best movie that Don Bluth ever made?
No.
For me, I would say yes, absolutely.
Whoa.
Honestly, it could actually be because of the tone of how it really took itself, because this really went into so many different levels. Like, it pretty much offers you everything. Like, you got a little bit of humor from Jeremy. You got a lot of elements of suspense. You really do have this massive backstory with what's going on with the world of NIMH. You got very strong characters with Mrs. Brisby and also some of the other rats of NIMH. Like, oh crap, who's the short little hairy guy? I keep forgetting his name.
The one who's the sidekick to the bad guy?
No, not him.
Whose name's never mentioned?
No, the little white one.
He's the doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Aegis.
Like a cranky. Yeah, Mr. Aegis, Justin, very strong characters. The plot line is you really do get really interested quickly, because it definitely does feel like it is a matter of life and death, where you definitely go into the perspective of these mice, knowing about their lives, and you see, when the tractor is coming, it really does feel like a massive disaster for these animals. And one of the beauties of The Secret of NIMH is that I think it's probably the only Don Bluth film where you watch it and you could legit feel like this could actually happen in the real world, because this is talking about scientific experiment and we're talking about the world of rats. So this could be a secret that they could be keeping for a long time. And in the viewpoint that they are showing how it could connect to the real world, it's connected very, very well. So yeah, on many levels, this is just pure genius. Definitely a masterpiece, and probably Don Bluth's best.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And James, why, in your opinion, is this not his best work?
I would say it's good. I'm not bashing the film at all. I like the music. I like how Bluth's style has settled in. In this place, it settled in early and easy. It was a very good match for him to take on this story, and I think he did it well. Especially with everything that he had to go through after Disney. If memory serves me, this was the project that he pitched to Disney before he quit working for them.
I think this was the one, yes.
Yes. A first feature film, it works, and I'm not saying it doesn't, I just felt stronger connections, I guess, with some of his later works. This one's beautiful to look at. I'll probably revisit it again at some point, like I do with all of Bluth's early work. I didn't feel as invested as I could have.
Sure. As for me, it's because I saw this movie much later, as opposed to like the other Don Bluth movies in which I saw it as a kid, I don't have a connection towards it. I do think that visual-wise, I do agree that this is some of his best work. If probably not his all-around best work, but I do kind of admit that maybe there could have been some things that would have been a little bit better, like some of the acting could have been a little bit better, and there's just some little tweaks of that kind of I wish there would have been, kind of either removed or could have been just done better. Like I think that one thing that, for example, is that the ending is kind of like a bit of a cop out in which Jeremy all of a sudden finds a love interest. It's like, where did this come from? It just felt really out of place, considering that, sure, there was a little bit of humor, but then there was nothing really romantic involved. And, and I do kind of agree with what Mars Girl said about that, sure, maybe the acting with some of the characters are a bit bland. I also like the music as well, although it's not much of a standout personally to me as some of the other songs in later Bluth movies. But I do...
Love, it seems, may fly in dreams, so hearts could soar.
Yes, that
Sorry,
one.
what were you saying?
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Bottom line, yes, I'm kind of in the middle in this one. So there are some great things that do make it his best, but then there's some things that I felt was better in other movies. So yeah, I guess we can move on to the next one, which is I guess we're not going to really talk about the video games, are we?
There are video games of that?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace.
Oh, those ones. Well,
all I can tell you about Dragon's Lair, first time I played it as a kid, I couldn't figure it out, was dying right at the bridge. I was just like, why can't I move?
That depends, James. Did you play the arcade one, or did you play the NES one? Because that sounds a lot like that Angry Video Game Nerd episode.
It was the arcade version ported over to the 3DO, which I was playing at the Good Guys, back when the Good Guys was an actual store.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never played any of the Dragon's Lair games on an older console. I did eventually play the DVD version, which that was a big mistake, because apparently it has input lag. Like, I tried clicking on a direction, I had to wait like a whole second, and then sometimes it wouldn't go through. So if I do find Dragon's Lair in the arcade or maybe in a newer console, I'll definitely give it a go, but don't play it on a DVD player. Just don't.
No, what you have to do is you have to get it on Steam.
Steam. Okay, that Steam. I can do.
It's remastered in high definition. It's actually playable. I recommend that.
Okay, I do have a Steam account, so I will definitely, when I have the chance, I will definitely pick it up on Steam. Just don't, please, for the listeners out there, don't do what I did. Don't play this game on DVD. And as for Space Ace, I've never seen it, nor have I seen the TV shows that came out of both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Not
TV
Bluth
shows
related.
Bad.
Yeah, so...
Not Bluth related. Might as well kiss my ass.
Moving on, so we have... so now we have An American Tail, and... Yeah, this is the one that... This was, like, definitely one of the first, if not the first, Don Bluth project I've ever seen. And... I really do enjoy this one a lot. I do feel the story with the Mouskowitzes going from Russia all the way to New York, definitely feeling very somber, especially when Fievel gets washed up into sea and then he tries looking for his family and thinking that he found his dad when he's listening to the violin playing, and it turns out that it's not. And then... thinking that they're going into the land of opportunity when they go to New York, and you just see the underlying dirty, gringy city that 1800s New York was. And of course there's the villain, Warren T. Rat, who's a cat. And Yeah, I think that for this for a movie like this, I remember seeing this one a lot, as well as Fievel Goes West, which I already discussed about in the Amblimation trilogy. But yeah, what are your thoughts about this movie?
Well, first I want to mention there is actually a little bit of a transition going from Secret of NIMH to An American Tail, because funny enough, An American Tail is actually the one that really put Don Bluth in the mainstream. Like, sure, Secret of NIMH was his first movie, but this is actually Don Bluth's first popular movie. Mm-hmm. And the way that he actually got in was actually because of the composer, I believe, or was it Jerry Goldsmith? I believe the composer for... Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith for Secret of NIMH. And apparently it was his favorite score to do. Like, he loved it so much. So when he went to do Poltergeist, he went and talked with Steven Spielberg about it, about this amazing movie that he worked on, The Secret of NIMH. So that's when Steven Spielberg approached Don Bluth and Gary Goldman in order to do a movie for him. So that's how they got together and got to work on The American Tail.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually...
It's who you know, I guess.
Yeah, and it's actually quite interesting seeing the contrast between going from Secret of NIMH to An American Tail, because you could tell that this one does have some hints of that Spielberg-esque into it, that you do have some... Like, you do have some parts of The Secret of NIMH, but in American Tail, like, they become a little bit more whimsier, and they're a lot more playful, especially with the addition of so many musical numbers. Like a good example is pretty much the use of cats, because in the Secret of NIMH, Dragon was a serious threat. Like, they portrayed him as a monster. They did the same thing in here, but there is a bit of a comical tone in a way. But yeah, like when you see the cats, like I don't know if anyone would agree with me. I find it hilarious. Like, when you see the cats, like, they would just roar like beasts. It's like they hold up a mouse and they're like.
I learned a very important lesson from this movie as a child, and that is, if you're ever invaded by Cossacks, always bang pots and pans together. Mm-hmm. That works, apparently, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But no, seriously, I mean, sure, that the song "Cats" is very whimsical, but if you hear the lyrics, sometimes they can be really somber. Like, the way that the cats, their family members get, the way that the mice's family members get killed, like the Irish mouse, I believe he was singing about how his loved one was attacked by the cat, and the only thing that was left was her tail. And then there's the Italian mouse who sings about how... And then there's the Italian mouse who sings about how his mother was eaten, and that the only thing was left was her necklace, and that in Papa Mouskowitz's, he was attacked by the cats as a young kid, and he was left an orphan. So even with something really whimsical, if you listen to the words, it's pretty depressing.
Yeah, and also on top of that, like, you listen to the lyrics, but you know the purpose of it. Like, they want to use it as a joke. Because, like, for example, the Italian mouse, like, the whole punchline is just like right at the end, where the Italian mouse just goes, "Oh, mamma mia," and then suddenly at the end, But there are no
cats in America, and the streets are filled with cheese.
Yeah. So yeah,
and that brings another point to the film right there. It seems like, especially with as you mentioned Spielberg's involvement, I want to bring something up. Apparently, Spielberg had a grandfather whose name was Fievel.
Yeah, I think that's who was named after.
When I look at this movie, I do see a great deal of Spielberg involvement, like Matt said, but I also see some pretty obvious parallels, or at least some pretty strong parallels, especially when you see Fievel's family going through Ferris Island in New York for immigration and whatnot, and they change the family. They want to change the names of the family members to something a little bit more Anglo-Saxon, shall we say? These are legit.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, these are legit conditions that immigrants coming from other countries at the time had to deal with. And furthermore, you had with the whole concept of no cats in America. That is such, well, obviously that's bullshit. I think for a certain period of time, America was sort of being looked at as, like you say, the land of opportunity. I'm not going to say we're not. We do have a lot of cases, especially back then, where immigrants were building up certain subsections of New York, and they sort of realized it's not that easy. There are cats in America.
Yeah, and also, you're right that the land of opportunity, sometimes it's a big struggle. You had to live in the slums. You had to work for long hours with little to no pay and no benefits. You, most of the time, got really sick. You were ostracized by people who made fun of you because of your heritage. Yeah, you had to go through a lot of struggles, absolutely.
I remember reading Harpo Marx's autobiography. He talks about this same sort of thing growing up in New York before they hit vaudeville. It's a tough neck of the woods, man. You got to deal with slums and everything.
Yeah, and this was like during the Industrial Revolution, like during like, I would say from the 1880s all the way up until like the 1900s, or even closer like the 1920s. You had a whole bunch of immigrants coming in.
Well, there is a good time. Well, they did present a good time setting to know like when was it entirely set in, and that is because it was when like at the end of the movie, you see the Statue of Liberty was brand spanking new, and like even one of the characters is actually a French pigeon.
We'll get to more French pigeons later.
Oh yeah.
Oh God. We'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a really smart way that they were able to set it in 1885, because that was like when immigration was still a fairly new thing. You had a whole bunch of people coming in from all over the world, and they heard all the news about America, about the new place to live, the land of opportunity. You had jobs. You had you stayed away from people who wanted to kill you because of your heritage, and you try to see if you can be able to make it out into the world. And it must have been just as hard, or not even harder, to move over to New York, because you're leaving everything behind, everything that you ever knew of, and you're ending up into like even worse conditions than you were before. And even still then, even though that you weren't like raided or being pillaged, you still were treated very poorly by everyone who didn't understand you. But I mean, even when I go to New York and I visit there every year, the places that I've gone to, like Chinatown or Little Italy, or even the Jewish communities, they still are living in their sections. But at the same time, it's nice to know that there's a lot more integration since then. So it's nice to know that we've come a long way.
There's been a lot of actual progress made on those grounds. Yes, not going to deny that.
Yeah,
but yeah, you got the fun aspects. You don't dwell too much on that underlying a bit about it in the film. There, it's a little bit more like Oliver Twist in that sense, where you have this slum-like atmosphere, but at the same time, they let you have some fun with this world, this universe that's been set up.
Go on.
And he's trying to find his family, but he also gets caught up in this big plot where cats are trying to be evil cats and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with An American Tail is that, yeah, you could see a lot of the historical aspect there, but this is not the kind of film that wants to do a social commentary. Like, it's not trying to make a big discussion about immigration or anything like that. The goal is just to see Fievel's adventure, where he ends up being lost in New York and is on a pursuit to try to find his family, while at the same time he meets a whole bunch of characters, good and bad. So that's kind of the whole operation of how it goes. And this is definitely one of those movies, kind of like what we said with Banjo, that's like really trying to manipulate with your emotions. Sometimes, like, you want to root so bad for Fievel to go back with his family, but then, like, sometimes you'll end up disappointed. Like, I remember there's this one scene where like, he's with a whole bunch of mice, and he meets up with the mayor, and, like, he describes it as, like, can you help me find my dad? And the mayor's just there, oh, no, sorry, I don't know him. And the scene just ends. It's like, you're just standing there, oh, well, screw you then.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's another major problem that I do have with this film, and I'm willing to admit that a lot of the scenes just come and go really quickly. It doesn't leave that much of a big impact on you. Like, when he first meets up with Tony, and they're trying to find Fievel's family, he all of a sudden meets up with this girl, and immediately they fall in love with one another. It's like they just met like 5 seconds ago, and now they're just smitten with each other. And then you have
well, that's puberty for you, right?
Please do not give me that excuse. You gave me that excuse with Louie and Cecilia. You're not gonna do that here. But I would give it a much bigger excuse because they are teenagers and Louie and Cecilia are children. But yeah, but still, it's just really quick. And also, with Fievel, he goes over to the factory. He leaves that immediately with Fievel trying to see if he can get some information with Warren and not thinking that he's evil. That goes pretty quickly. Fievel meeting up with Tiger, and then they just become friends like immediately. And then you have Fievel over at the orphanage, and it starts feeling really sad and depressing, and then he starts finding his family like right away, like unknowingly. So yeah, I mean, you have all these little moments here and there, but it feels like it's playing in fast forward. Like, it doesn't really take time to sit in and appreciate everything that he's going through. It just feels like it's going really quickly.
Speaking of which, does anyone here know how to sing a Hard Knock Life in Russian? Just saying.
No, I don't. I don't.
Because that's what I want to do when I see that scene. It's a hard knock life.
That would be cool. I mean, if any of my listeners are Russian, then please teach James how to sing that that song in Russian. That'd be awesome. But yeah, and also another thing that is a bit of a nitpick to me is that the songs are a mixed bag. I do like Somewhere Out There, and I do like Cats in America, but then there are some songs that they're okay, but they're not really much of a standout to me. Like, songs like Never Say Never or We're a Duo, they're fine. They're pretty cute, but it's not much of a massive impact on me personally. So yeah, I don't think there's really much I can say about An American Tail, so I guess we can just move on. So yeah, I think the next one is Land Before Time. So yeah, I already talked about my memories with Land Before Time when I got my VHS tape with We're Back. So yeah, what's your history with this movie?
My thoughts, well, with Land Before Time, it is definitely very sweet. In a way, it does take some page, like when you do think about it, it does take a lot of pages story-wise from An American Tail, where like it's mostly kind of this point, like going from point A to point B kind of plot. There definitely is a lot of heart. There definitely is a lot of great execution in there, especially with like manipulating with the emotions, and also meeting up with some characters. But this, in a way, like the characters, how they did it here is arguably a lot better than in An American Tail, because in here, like, they don't just go away. It isn't just like your typical, oh, let's meet this character, then move on, meet the next character. Like, the characters that Littlefoot would meet here they would stick around, with the exception of his mother.
And old Rooter.
And old Rooter, yes.
I'm a drive-by Aesop. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Yeah. But either way, like, the characters do get to stick around, and you do see their adventures going from one way to another. But it's really interesting how this ended up coming to be, because originally, not just Steven Spielberg, but also George Lucas, they both wanted to make a realistic style dinosaur movie, because they basically wanted to make a feature film version of the Rite of Spring segment in Walt Disney's Fantasia. But they
feel like that now that you mention it.
Yeah, the executives mentioned, though, that, you know, it's not going to be appealing as a mainstream movie, so they have to add in some dialogue into it. And for a while, they really didn't know what to do. Like, they don't know how the story would go, and they still had to pay animators, which is why the opening, it was pretty much animators just doing exercises, animating real dinosaurs. Like, it had nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
And somehow it still works. They still have a narrative that works around that explains what's going on, which I actually find nice about that. I think for me, you mentioned they have the journey aspect. Yeah, there's some Journey to the West parallels here, basically. Well, I shouldn't really say parallel, because they say it right in the beginning. They're journeying towards the West.
Yeah, but then again, how many TV shows, movies, anime are basically homaging or taking influences from Journey to the West? Seriously.
Mm-hmm. It's a trope in and of itself, but I also look back on that. I noticed so many different parallels to Bambi also, like not just the mother deaths and whatnot.
Like the coming-of-age style story?
There's the coming-of-age aspect to this, only here, whereas Bambi was being very, very playful with it. Here, they actually have a goal set and characters who are tested. But mainly, now that we're sitting here and thinking about it, I think, Littlefoot's birth scene does feel, in a way, like it plays out like Bambi's birth, and when he's first revealed to the forest critters.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean,
yeah, a little bit.
I mean, even though that Don Bluth was fed up with the way that Disney was, you can definitely tell that the spirit of Disney appealing to all ages was like right on his sleeve whenever he did his work. I think I remember when he was doing NIMH that he wanted to make the movie very dark, but at the same time very hopeful and optimistic. He wanted to take the same parallels of Pinocchio and put it into that movie. And I guess in this case, for Land Before Time, he wanted to take the similar aspects of Bambi and put it into this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because ultimately the biggest goal for Don Bluth is to take the magic of some of Walt Disney's old films and bring it back to his feature films so new audiences can appreciate it. Because during the time when Don Bluth was both working at Disney and then working on his own feature films, even at this point, Disney was pretty much entering into a new age where they're using new technologies to create their films. And also, a lot of the old animators, like the 9 Old Men, were already retiring and making room for a bunch of new kids. So basically, the ultimate goal of what Don Bluth wanted to do is to bring that old magic back.
Yeah, he really succeeded with that here, especially when you're dealing with a story that's essentially revolving around a group of kids that all manage to somehow set aside their differences to overcome obstacles.
It's very, very fascinating that Don Bluth was able to take the old magic from like the 1930s and 40s and bring it into a new era when it was a much needed time, because this was around when Disney was still trying to get its footing with all these new animators coming in, and they were just kind of a little lost along the way. I believe that it was released roughly around the same time as Oliver and Company, which it's kind of funny because you were even mentioning this before, that An American Tail was basically a version of like Oliver Twist, in which you have this kid who's wandering around trying to find his place in the world, or in this case with Fievel, trying to find his family. So yeah, essentially, you know, Disney just wasn't in its end game at the time, which we'll definitely get to a little bit later on. But the two most influential animators in the 80s were Ralph Bakshi and Don Bluth. Everybody else was either trying to be, you know, trying to capitalize on whatever toys and merchandise was going on around the time, or they were trying to popularize celebrities or action figures or movies that were clearly not for kids, but decided to make TV shows off of them anyway.
The 80s were definitely more about TV animation than animated features. I would say it was more Don Bluth's decade more than Ralph Bakshi's, because some people could even debate that Ralph Bakshi was an animator more for the 70s than it is the 80s. Don Bluth was the one that pretty much kept animated features alive to still make it recognizable, and he was pretty much the first legitimate guy to show that there is more than just Disney when it comes to animated features, because during the 80s, the biggest name in Hollywood was Steven Spielberg. So when they saw that Steven Spielberg was doing animated works, it immediately got the attention of people, and that's how they would notice the works of Don Bluth. So at the time, they realized that they don't have to be dependent on Disney to get some great animated quality work.
Yeah, and that would definitely lead up into much later on, in which today we don't always rely on Disney for us to get great animated features. We have Pixar, we have DreamWorks, we have Sony Pictures Animation, we have Illumination Entertainment, and also we have Studio Ghibli. So yeah, there's plenty of them, and I don't know if we can credit Don Bluth for being the guy who was responsible for all the great animated features that were not Disney, but you can definitely tell that he was one that you immediately think of.
Yeah, it was the first. He was pretty much the first serious competition that Disney had in terms of feature films.
Right. So yeah, going into Land Before Time. It does definitely play into the balance of being really light, but at the same time being really serious, like An American Tail. But I feel that this is a better structured movie, because it's like you said before, that there's not just a case in which, Littlefoot met up with Sarah, Spike, Ducky, and Peter, and then he just left and continued wandering by himself. No. He met up with them. We got to know them as characters. It was very diverse. We got to see that they had to put aside their differences so they can work together to escape the Sharptooth and try to find themselves to the Great Valley in a time of Pangea, where the world was constantly changing and being incredibly unpredictable. There was dangers constantly around them. There was lava, there was earthquakes, there were tar pits, there was starvation. So, yeah, I feel that, in my personal opinion, I feel that everything that American Tail did in the terms of emotion, in the terms of an adventure, in the terms of trying to find something, I think that Land Before Time was the one that really perfected it.
This is actually the shortest film within its own series, and yet somehow it's the most emotionally investing and emotionally impactful. This is a short movie. 69 minutes, just barely over an hour,
it does feel like a full-on 90-minute feature film, but that's mainly because you get so invested into it.
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned before, there was 18 minutes worth of trim material.
Yes.
And even as a kid, I noticed I always found it was very curious. There were some things about the editing. I just felt like there's a moment where after we see Littlefoot nestling into his mother's back and it dissolves, they have a really abrupt transition towards him when he's now suddenly an adolescent, and it always sounded like there was a jump in the sound or the visual or whatnot, and he's suddenly talking to his mom about, "Mother, is this all we have to eat?" And I always felt like, was there a little bit more there that just got trimmed out?
Yeah.
Well, technically, yeah, because technically there is like they had to cut out a lot of scenes apparently, because originally I think it was like 80 minutes long or something like that, but they had to cut out some parts of it. Nobody knows whatever happened to those clips, but it could be possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I would fund a Kickstarter for that, just to figure out what happened to that footage.
If anything, if there's maybe like the original script, if that could ever be found, and maybe a person who's really passionate about it can be able to do their very best to animate the last couple of minutes worth of lost footage, then I would pay good money to see that. Anyway, and
so
also
long as they did them justice.
Yeah, as long as they do it justice, right? But yeah, I think another thing, I actually also have a confession as well, that the song "If We Hold On Together," I actually sung that in my graduation ceremony.
Aww.
Yeah, and
awesome.
and also I had to do it in sign language because I believe that we had a few students who were deaf, and so I think it was one of the teachers who suggested that we should all do sign language for the students who were of hard of hearing. So I don't remember how to do the song in sign language anymore. It's been 20 years, but yeah, we actually had to practice all the time to see if we can do the song in sign language while singing the song at the same time.
Yeah, the music is a terrific asset to this film altogether. I want to give a shout out to James Horner, who did the score for this. Every time I think of James Horner's work, when he died in the plane crash, this was the movie that I immediately associated with. And he did a lot of great movie scores, but this is the one that I always come back to because it manages to capture such a perfect balance of whimsy and fantasy and excitement that is really hard to bottle from a musical standpoint. There's other composers out there that try to capture that really, really try, but that's just the thing. They're not James Horner,
Yeah, to be honest, like out of all the compositions in all of Don Bluth's films, I would have to say Land Before Time is probably the best. And I remember when I was working on Animation Look Back Don Bluth, like the whole documentary on that, like mostly the places where I talk about Don Bluth's point in history, I would include a soundtrack of The Land Before Time because it really was that good, and it really does emphasize it does emphasize the mood of what would be going on in there.
Yeah, I definitely do agree that out of the movies that James Horner did for Don Bluth, The Land Before Time soundtrack is my favorite. All right, I guess there's not really much to say afterwards except that if you're wondering, we're not going to talk about the sequels. So no, we're not talking about the sequels.
No, we don't have time. Move on.
Move on. Okay, next one. Okay,
but we have a lot of time because your favorite is the one of us. Your favorite is the one of us.
Okay, so All Dogs Go to Heaven. So yeah, this one again, I also do remember because this was another tape that I got from my dad, and this one was a very strange one that he put together in because he added All Dogs Go to Heaven with, I think, from what I remember, I don't remember, it was like this weird movie about a dog, and I don't remember what the movie is, and I can never find it, but it was like a singing dog, and he mashed it up with All Dogs Go to Heaven. So I don't remember anything about it, so I don't know the name. I tried looking it up. I can't find it anywhere. So if anybody can give me a clue, then please leave it in the comments. But
talk to me about that after the podcast here. We'll try to search it down together.
Okay, thanks. All right, so yeah, All Dogs Go to Heaven. It does have like a mixture between humor and dark elements. Yeah, I think that for the most part, some of the dark elements are like really dark. Like it talks about gambling, talks about smoking and drinking, and Charlie going to hell and death.
Not to mention the whorehouses.
Oh my God, yes, the whorehouses.
I remember growing up and watching the movie again, and he mentions whorehouses at one point. I was just like, did I hear that right? I had to turn up the volume and everything. Like,
just rewind all the time.
He said,
oh, like,
yeah,
whorehouses.
He's so casually when he says it. He's like, whorehouses.
Yeah, this is usually the part where, like, if this was like an edited video, like you just have him repeat it, and then at the end you just have him saying in slow motion, just like whorehouses.
Whorehouses? Yeah. Whorehouses? Yeah. Whorehouses?
Whorehouses?
Yeah, it's just crazy to me that they were able to get away with that. And like, what was this movie rated? Like G or PG or something?
Here's the thing. I remember as a kid going to a church bookstore. They had this movie on sale there.
Oh my god, that's great. I mean, sure.
Of course you're going to find it in a church bookstore, but whorehouses?
Right. And I get it, because it's about a dog going to heaven. I get it, but still, it's just crazy. But, yeah, I think that, for the most part, All Dogs Go to Heaven, it's really fascinating about how they were able to get away with it. I don't think it's as polished compared to Land Before Time, but I think that the stuff that is good in this movie is amazing. Like, I do like the dynamics between Charlie and Itchy. I think that in this movie, Dom DeLuise does his best work in a Don Bluth movie. I really like Anne Marie. I do think that she has this innocence that is just so heartwarming, that she talks to animals, she wants to find a family because she's an orphan. And also, Carface is a dick. He basically, frames Charlie for something he didn't do, puts him in jail for him to rot forever, takes advantage and takes over his casino to run it by himself. Then he finds out, oh, shit, my partner's gone out of prison. I'm gonna get him drunk and I'm gonna have him killed. And then he just, plays off like it never happened, hires a bunch of people to go and kill him. That didn't work, so he goes off by himself, gets a ray gun and shoots him, and then kidnaps the girl, and then tries to drown him. It's like, seriously, dude, that's just insane.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's dark elements in this movie. There's pushing the limit, and I applaud them. As a former kid who sat through all this twice in a row, I applaud them for every moment of it. I approve of the balls that they had to put this movie together.
For a movie that's rated G, you could never get away with this stuff. Never.
Oh, yeah. Even Asian stereotypes.
Oh my god.
A few nitpick jokes here and there. For this very reason, I love it, and I want to say, there was some censoring done to get that G rating.
Yeah, I can imagine, because the stuff that they were able to get away with without the censoring is just, I have to applaud them for that. Seriously, whorehouses.
Well, actually, you know what the word that got censored was?
What?
When Charlie first visits heaven and he's getting suited up and everything, the line that he has in the movie is, "That Carface, I'm going to kill him."
Yes.
You get to hear the extended version of that in the soundtrack, where he actually says, "Damn that Carface, I'm going to kill him."
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
If you look closely while watching the movie, you can see him mouthing the word "damn."
Oh, interesting. I'll definitely have to look into that, yeah.
Right before that, so they're like, oh, can't have that, snip, snip. So that, whorehouse is fine. Damn?
Nope.
Damn.
Damn, you have to go away, damn. I mean,
I don't know about you guys. I'd rather have a whorehouse than a dam.
Yeah. But, yeah,
I'd rather have my big-lipped alligator moment with a dam, too.
Oh, my God. That's probably the one thing I hate about this movie. It's just, it comes right out of nowhere. Seriously. I get it. That's the whole joke. It's like, he comes right out of nowhere and nobody talks about it again. But here's the thing. At least the alligator does come back in the end and he eats Carface. So, yeah, it wasn't like it just came and went. But, yeah, I mean, in that one moment in which it's a very flamboyant alligator who sings that song, and they're swimming, and it's just weird. But then again, unlike Land Before Time, I'm not really too crazy about the songs in this movie. I mean, sure.
Let's make music together. Let's make
sweet harmony. Oh. Yeah, there's that, and there's You Can't Keep a Good Dog Down. There's, let's see what else. I mean, that song with Anne Marie was
Which actually does remind me, sometimes the deaths can actually be brutal. Like when I think about Can't Keep a Good Dog Down, like I think about the moment when they successfully did kill Charlie, like with the whole car and everything. It's like, holy crap.
That is such a dark moment. But this movie is actually great for going in between those two extremes, because they have the really lighthearted and cuteness aspect, especially with what he goes through with Anne Marie. I love Anne Marie as a character. She's just such a Shirley Temple. She really is.
She's a great character. She's probably one of my favorite human characters that Don Bluth ever created. She's so innocent. She's so optimistic, thinking that she's going to get a family one day. You just root for her throughout the end. And, I guess we cannot talk about Anne-Marie without talking about, Judy Barcy, in which...
Do we have to?
Okay, no. Okay, we don't have to. We don't have to.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, if there's a performance to go out on, this is it. I mean, because they had that nice little moment at the end of the movie together where they're just like, "Oh, Charlie, where are you going? On a little trip. Won't be back long." They're saying goodbye to each other, and that's why that scene gets me choked up, like as a grown man, even.
Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking to watch, which is why All Dogs 2 fucked up so bad.
Oh, God. Yeah, they tried to replace Anne-Marie with David. You're not going to do that, seriously. You're not going to replace Anne-Marie with David. I'm sorry.
The Land Before Time sequels were bad, but they were never this level of raping what made the worst movie good.
Oh, my God. Thank God we're not talking about that. We got enough crap we'll have to talk about later on, but it's really sad. It's just absolutely tragic. But you know what? Let's not talk about it too much. There's been a lot of other people who have. So, if you don't know what happened, then you can look it up online.
Wasn't going to say anything else.
Yeah, so let's just move on.
I want to leave this on a funny story.
Sure.
Regarding to the film, Don shared this years ago on when it came to the passing of Dom DeLuise. He shared this story on his blog about Dom DeLuise when he was in the recording studio with Burt Reynolds, and they were, I think they were recording the Sharing song.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it like? The more you share, the more you're gonna. No, the more you're gonna get.
The more you're gonna get.
It's like more of a samba-like song. It's like
apparently, Burt Reynolds, he actually sang his bit in there, and he's not much of a singer.
No.
So while he's recording, Don Bluth is actually right outside, conducting his hands like this. Bert stops and he tells him to stop singing, and he starts getting really pissed off at Don for doing that, because he finds it very distracting. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And Dom had to step in and tell him to calm down and everything and whatnot. He's like, oh, he's just conducting, like, you do in an orchestra, keeping tempo and whatnot. So they calmed him down. They got Bert back into the studio. And so as they're recording again, Don's doing this with his hands, and Bert flips out again. Total prima donna. Starts going buck wild on Don. And Dom DeLuise actually steps in and says, Bert, quit being an asshole.
Wow. The man...
They should have kept that for the movie.
That would have been amazing. Charlie, quit being an asshole.
Yeah, it's like, Dom, can you do me a favor? Just say the word Charlie a few times. Why? Why is that? For reasons.
Remember when he's giving that speech to Charlie about how taking care of Anne-Marie is getting them killed? He could have just said, Charlie, let Anne-Marie go because you're getting us killed. You're an asshole.
What if he came up to him after that scene where he gets the crap kicked out of him by Carface, and he's all comes up and just like, Charlie, quit being an asshole.
That's a great story, by the way. That's awesome. So yeah, that's a great way to end All Dogs Go to Heaven, but unfortunately it goes downhill from here.
Yes.
Okay, so right before we discuss about those movies, I actually sent James a few links online about the movies that Don Bluth wanted to pitch to make, but they never got made. So one of them was going to be pitched around the mid to late 80s. Don Bluth wanted to make his own version of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes. Oh, that was a while. Yeah, that was a while. I think even before the times of I think that was even before he did The Secret of NIMH.
I think
because
so,
there were a lot of ideas that he wanted to do.
Yeah. So James just linked the site online, but yeah, there's that. Then there's one that was released in 2009 in his official YouTube channel called Jawbreaker, which is only a minute long.
That was a TV show, actually.
Oh, really?
You wanted to make that into a TV show? That was some weird shit.
Yeah, because originally when it was like the whole time with Sullivan Bluth, the original plan was that they also wanted to do TV shows with Don Bluth quality animation, and Jawbreaker was actually one of them.
Why did they do this for Dragon's Lair?
Because it would be way too freaking expensive for one.
True. Okay, fair enough. But seriously, that would have been awesome.
Because Don would be standing in front of the TV studio, stacking up huge piles of paper and saying, "This is how much you need to make."
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and the third one that he wanted to do was called The Little Blue Whale, which there are a few pictures of, and they look pretty cool, actually.
Going back really quickly to the Beauty and the Beast pictures that they have here, I'm getting I'm not particularly partial to this, but I will say this. I'm getting a Cocteau vibe from the Beast design.
Yeah, like you could definitely tell that with what Don Bluth wanted to do, like he would probably stick a lot more to the book, more so than what Disney did with their version.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too surprising because this was before the TV show, right? Like the one that had
the one that had Belle Buckeyed, you know?
Yeah, that's the one. And the one that had Ron Perlman as Vincent. So this was like...
Oh, that one.
Oh, that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the other one.
I was wondering, this is like, what Beauty and the Beast TV show?
I'm talking about
because in my mind, I was only thinking of like the...
Belle's Magical World.
No, the Beauty and the Beast ripoffs, like the animated ones, like Good Times.
Oh, no. Those were after, right?
Those were after.
Probably. But nowadays, they're completely useless now.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, if he would have released it, that would have been pretty fascinating.
Got this one picture where Beauty's sitting in bed with a bunch of squirrels and a bird. Yeah, this is totally Snow White right here.
That is definitely Snow White.
Then there's that one picture where apparently, I think it was supposed to be the dream sequence, where you see Belle and like probably the prince riding on a Pegasus.
Yeah, with a bunch of wolves beating around.
What is this? The Last Unicorn.
Or you know, also it could have been like She-Ra in a sense.
Or maybe he just borrowed it from Hercules, you know.
Maybe
pre-Hercules.
Yeah, pre-Hercules. Who was the one who rode Pegasus? Was it Perseus? Or was it Hermes? Yeah. I don't remember. But yeah, this would have been pretty interesting. As for the Little Blue Whale, this was supposed to be made after All Dogs Go to Heaven, but because All Dogs Go to Heaven came out around the same time as The Little Mermaid, the only way it was able to make it was able to make a lot of money when it was released on VHS, but in the theaters it was a massive bomb. So this was the movie that he wanted to do afterwards, but unfortunately we had gotten Rock-a-doodle instead. Which,
unfortunately,
Rock-a-doodle.
I'm not really. I'm sorry. I don't really like Rock-a-doodle. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I might have to side with you on that one, honestly, because when it comes to Rock-a-doodle, like, I'll just say it right now, you can definitely tell that what they want to do is basically copy a lot of the elements of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
Because
that's
at
definitely...
the time, that was the biggest movie, and they wanted to really utilize the technology to blend in live action with animation. Now, granted, they don't do that a lot, but they want to invoke that feeling. And especially with the, like, honestly, I would say this is probably the most childish of all the Don Bluth films, even more than Banjo, and yes, even more than Troll in Central Park. And that's mainly because of the annoying little kid as the star.
Oh, God.
Like, they try way too hard for him to be all cutesy.
Oh, Chanticleer. Especially with the way he speaks.
I like that voice. This movie is such a... Okay, I'm not going to defend this movie on the grounds saying it's good. I'm going to defend this movie on the grounds saying it's a guilty pleasure.
Fair enough.
And I say that because there's a time we're not going to sit here and pretend like there was something about Bluth's earlier work that was not too weird or not too imperfect. A lot of what made his earlier works was embracing some of that weirdness and some of that imperfection. Not everything was perfectly cute or what have you, like especially in American Tail or Secret of NIMH. But with this one, this is a film that starts a short-lived trend in Bluth's lineup that says, let's crank that weirdness up to uncomfortable. And looking back an adult, I kind of get that a little bit. Like, I will sit back and watch this, even like as I was a kid. Like, there's a certain degree of saying, I'm uncomfortable seeing this and liking it, but I don't know why.
The movie, in my opinion, the movie is just all over the place, and it tries to cram way too many stuff in here. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, here's the thing. So, I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to have the story about a rooster who crows and brings out the sun, and then the rooster was attacked by a bunch of owls, and he runs away thinking that, oh, the sun is already up already, so I'm just going to walk away. I'm not useful anymore. And then it starts raining, and then it parallels into real life, and then you have that mixture of live action and animation similar to what they were doing with Roger Rabbit. But then you have all these characters. Like, there's so many side characters in this movie, and none of them are developed. The only one who's really developed besides Edmund and Chanticleer is Patu. And the only reason why is because he has that one joke.
How to
tie his shoes, yes. That's basically it. He just wants to tie his shoes.
I will set up this fault also with the film. With every single one of Don Bluth's films, even if you don't think the music was more memorable in, say, All Dogs Go to Heaven, I can't name a single hummable tune in this one.
Yeah, me neither. The songs are incredibly forgettable.
I like some of the catchy energy that Glenn Campbell puts in a lot of his Elvis impressions here.
Honestly, actually, like, I just thought of it now. Like, the only memorable thing in general in this movie would have to be the villain, the Grand Duke of Owl. That, I have to admit, he's actually a pretty good villain in this. But
Twiddly-dee. They run out of batteries.
Okay, no batteries. There are some stupid... Okay, there are some really stupid moments. That is true. But, like, at least his song, like, in the... Like, when we, I don't know where, but it's like when we first see him in his lair, that one was actually really cool. But other than that, there really isn't much to it. I mean, sure, like, the animation is good. It is fine. And I guess some people would get the hots for Goldie, I guess.
Oh my God.
Talk about chicken breasts.
But I do
good for the tourists.
Love has said hello. You don't know what that means. She does sound like she's played by a drag queen. I can't.
Oh my!
That's the songs. I mean, you can't really appreciate the songs because they're being interrupted by Patu's narration.
Actually, when you do think about it, it really is pretty much, a lot of the characters do look like Five Nights at Freddy's before Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, you got Goldie as Chica. Her manager is basically a fat version of Foxy.
And, let's see. Let's see. We have. There's no bears in.
I don't think there
Rock-a-doodle.
was a bear.
No, there's no bears.
Maybe a rabbit.
Yeah.
I will say this: when I look at this movie, I have a theory. I have two theories, in fact.
Okay.
It's Don Bluth. On the one hand, it's Don Bluth trying to do that Chanticleer Disney adaptation that Disney never got to do themselves.
Oh yes, that one.
And
that was those are some really good examples of artwork by Mark Davis. Those are really awesome.
And two, when I look at Edmund as a character, there's something about this character that seems very, very similar to Banjo in a sense.
Because he turned into a cat.
not just because of that, but he's got. But because there's something very similar about the attitude. Although Sparky Marcus was by far the better child actor, something similar in design. I can't quite put my finger on it, but like maybe Don was saying, okay, so I never got to make my Banjo movie. This is the closest I'm going to get here with this character.
Okay.
So I'll give him some respect for trying.
Sure.
The movie is, it's weird. There's so many weird elements in here, but I don't know. I saw that at that right age where I was just willing to put up with it, and it sort of stuck in my memory banks alongside there, and for that very reason. So I'm not going to say go out and buy it, but I will say, Matt, where did you get that behind the scenes footage for your Don Bluth specials?
Oh, what was it? For Rock-a-doodle?
Yeah, because
I must have found it somewhere on YouTube a while back. Like while I was making it, I was lucky enough to find like behind the scenes where Don Bluth was filming the live action parts for the for Rock-a-doodle. But interestingly enough, that actually was an interesting experiment for Don, because I just remembered now that apparently he hated doing live action, like doing those directing those live action bits. For him, it was a nightmare. He's way too accustomed working on animation, and he prefers to work on that platform there.
Oh, you can tell.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. In fact, the live action segments were kind of pointless. You could have made the whole thing animated and it wouldn't have mattered.
Chanticleer!
Quote for me! Okay, we're done. Next one.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Thumbelina. And
oh, boy.
Yeah, I admit that this was, as a kid, I also watched this one a lot because, I don't know, when you're a young girl who grew up during the Renaissance era where there was like so many fairy tale adaptations like this and The Princess and the Goblin and Happily Ever After, you do get to see Thumbelina at least one point in your life. And I do remember seeing this a handful of times. And yeah, it's like, and now looking back at it as an adult, it's like, yeah, this is definitely Don Bluth's take on trying to be like the Little Mermaid.
No, this is not just Don Bluth trying to be the Little Mermaid. This is legit Don Bluth trying to copy the Disney formula.
Well, I'm just saying like the Disney formula, you know, like it's a Hans Christian Andersen book. You had Jodie Benson as the leading lady. So that's what I meant by.
And then you also got Gilbert Gottfried as the villain's assistant.
Yes.
No, there are so many. There are so many elements where you could tell that Don Bluth was desperately trying to make a Disney movie. Like he wasn't thinking of anything else other than to just make a Disney film, and it really did fall apart because, ironically, it's like he didn't understood at the time. Like, what is it that made a Disney movie a Disney movie. But actually, there is an explanation to it, because he wasn't fully focusing on it. Because at the time, like, keep in mind, when you think about the release dates of Pebble and the Penguin, Thumbelina, and Troll in Central Park, they are ridiculously close to one another. And that was mainly because, they were all working on them at the same time, and Don Bluth and Gary Goldman had to direct those 3 films. So instead of putting all his focus onto one, he had to split it into 3 different ways. So he couldn't really focus on any of, like, the technical errors or the story issues. He had to keep the process going, even with the problems.
Yeah, and that unfortunately was his downfall, too, because not only are those 3 movies roughly, when the ones that he did roughly around the same time, a lot of people consider those his worst, but it was also the demise of his studio. And yeah, I think that, and also, if you read the original Thumbelina book, it does follow somewhat similar to the book, except without all the talking animals and stuff, but yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell that it's trying so hard to be like the Disney formula, especially when you have Cornelius coming by and he shows Thumbelina flying in the bee where he sings that song. It's definitely like a whole new world.
I'm going to give that one song credibility because I actually kind of like it.
That's fair.
That's
which one?
That's,
let me be your wings.
Oh yeah, no, that was the one that people liked the most.
That's the only shining, glimmering pearl of hope in this entire mess.
Yeah, because it's much better than Marry the Mole.
Oh my god,
I hate this movie. And I don't say that about Don Bluth. I don't say that about Don Bluth.
This is one that doesn't age well. And funny enough, Marry the Mole
well. Yeah, it didn't age well when it was released.
No, it didn't at all, because there were so many animated Disney knockoffs, like I was mentioning before, like Princess and the Goblin and Happily Ever After and the Swan Princess movies. Everybody was trying to be like the next Disney movie.
That was the whole thing with the 90s. Everybody had to be a musical, and everybody tried to get up to Disney's level because they noticed that not only were Disney movies they were in the top of their game, but also financially they were some of the most profitable films that they've ever made. Rather it be like Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin. They were really making a lot of money, and they were hoping to cash in on that success, but they didn't really know how is it they managed to get it, because those companies didn't have that same legacy as Disney had.
I highly recommend that you listen to the Animated Anarchy podcast where they were talking about Gay Paris and about how there were a lot of songs in Gay Paris, but the songs were there, but they were not necessary, and they kind of were trying to be like the Disney formula, but the whole purpose of songs for Disney was for exposition. It helped carry the story forward, it developed the characters, and they just felt like all these Disney knockoffs of the 90s, they felt it was just the easy way. It's like, try to be an adaptation of a fairy tale, try to have lots of music, try to have lots of whimsical characters, and that was pretty much it. It was just so easy and cheap to do.
Actually, you know what would have made this movie passable, in my opinion? So we're going with the Journey formula again, right?
Yes.
With this one, try having characters outside of this character's home that are actually likable.
Oh God!
In order to
can we talk about Giacomo?
Jacques, the French frickin' Robin. Let's talk about his ass, because I have problems with everyone, including him.
Okay, so yeah, Giacomo could have easily flown Thumbelina back home, but instead he released the lily pad that she was trapped in by the frogs, almost had her drowned. Luckily, a bunch of fish came by and flopped him in. Then he was singing that Follow Your Heart song. Then he just flew away, not even remotely thinking, I could fly her back home. It's not actually that far away. I mean, we even saw a segment in which she was like, just like literally right there, right at her house. She could have easily gone back. But nope, it's all about manipulative, follow your heart bullshit, so...
No, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest problems with Thumbelina, is that it's not subtle whatsoever. Like, it really does try to hammer in the message, especially when you have what was it? Like, you have Thumbelina herself with her popular catchphrase, "It's just impossible." Like, she says that so many times throughout the film. And then, like, you got Jaimetud coming in, like, always hammering in just the message, like, right from the very start of this. Mm-hmm. So, it really does... it really does try to be desperate, like hammering in the message that nothing is impossible when you follow your heart.
No, you will find your love. Hey, I'm trying to be Lumiere as a pigeon.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we were talking earlier in the podcast about how a lot of
she is the one. She will break the prince's. She will break the prince's spell and free her from the eyes.
Yeah, I know that we were talking earlier in the podcast about how a lot of the earlier Don Bluth movies were manipulative with their emotions. Well, this one is just really manipulative with its message, and it's just so painful. I mean, you have Thumbelina going through a lot of stuff, like her meeting up with the frog, who's voiced by Charo, of all things, forcing her to marry her son. Then you have the beetle voiced by Gilbert Gottfried, bringing it over to his nightclub, then calling her ugly, then going over to the rat played by Carol Channing.
The whorehouse?
The whorehouse.
That would have been a better movie.
Yeah, but yeah, then you have the house with the mouse voiced by Carol Channing saying, "You have to marry the mole. The mole is rich.
Do it for the money."
M is for money. O-L-E. That's the thing that I hate the most about this movie. Everyone that she meets on her journey is terrible. Everyone is trying to force her into marrying them, and what does she do? She is almost ready to go along with it every step of the way.
Yeah, I mean, unlike Mrs. Brisby, in which she is determined to help out her family no matter what obstacles come in her way, it's like, oh, you're gonna marry this guy. Okay. You're gonna marry this guy. Okay. It's impossible. I can't do anything else, like, I don't know, go away or something. It's like, no, I'm just gonna go with it. Sure. So, yeah, I mean, this movie is just, wow. It's just all over. And the fact, and the sad part of it is that you have her falling in love with a prince that she barely met, and she immediately wants to marry him. This is what Disney is making fun of nowadays. This is the same trope that they have been doing for a long time, and they're just laying it on really, really thick.
Yeah. There's no chemistry except, well, hey, they sing a nice little duet together. And that's really the only salvageable thing about this freaking movie. Let's talk about the designs, too. Remember how I said that part of his charm was in direction, was in imperfections where nothing's perfectly cute or anything like that?
Sure.
This world is just ugly. There's nothing charming about it. In fact, there's something disturbing about a mama frog who moves proportionally like a human being.
Well, that's Charo for you. She's very, very busty, and she's very suggestive like that. If you ever seen her in various movies and TV shows that she's appeared in, she's always, at least she didn't do her trademark, hey, Gucci, 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 where she, like, has her...
I think she did that, actually.
Oh, she did?
I think she did.
Oh, my God.
I think she did, yeah.
Oh, God, then you know that's definitely Charo. You definitely know that's Charo. Oh, God. So, yeah, she's definitely, like, very, very high like that, so...
Yeah, the bug children are ugly, and I don't like to look at them either. I want to step on them instead.
Or maybe get a magnifying glass and have them set on fire.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you know what? I think we're done here.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
We got more movies.
Yeah, we got two more, thank God. Okay, so the next one, A Troll in Central Park, and a lot of people say that this is Don Bluth's worst movie. What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh my! Well, if I could be very honest, yeah, I could definitely see why people would say this is Don Bluth's worst, and I could definitely agree. This is one of his stupidest films. But I wouldn't say that it's bad. Like, it really is enjoyable, but you have to really have a specific mindset for it, because this is really a brainless movie. Like, some people would say that this is the cartoon's cartoon. I think the Nostalgia Critic actually said it best, that this is the kind of cartoon that cartoons would watch on TV. And it really is, because the tone is just so childish to the point that it's in no way taking itself seriously. Literally happy dancing flowers, and like you got smiling characters. It's like everything about it is so exaggeratingly childish that it becomes highly entertaining in a different sense.
Maybe it's trying to be like the silly symphonies, where they had the dancing trees and flowers, the gay aunties and whatnot.
There's kind of a difference, though. With the silly symphonies, they're meant to be just little 7-minute cartoons. They're just trying to be its own thing. Troll in Central Park is a freaking movie, and it tries to have a plot and everything like that. It's just ridiculously stupid with how they're emphasizing the childish silliness, where you got, and especially the villain, literally called Gnorga, the Queen of Mean, trying to make everything mean and ugly and bad.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that My Little Pony movie in which you have the evil witch and her daughters, and she's trying to fill everything up with splooge and trying to make the ponies not have any fun. That definitely reminds me of that.
You could still apply that to Friendship is Magic, but that's more in a different sense with the bronies.
Yes.
I have.
I know what you mean. It also reminds me more like with the Care Bears movie, but yeah, honestly,
the Care Bears movie was butch compared to some of this.
No, but honestly, even just trying to describe a troll in Central Park, you cannot do it without imitating a 4-year-old's voice.
So there was this story about a troll, and he grew things with his thumb, and it takes place in a park.
Exactly. I mean,
and there's a bunch of trolls.
A troll in Central Park with a straight face.
Yeah, right.
I disagree with you, because if you haven't seen a troll in Central Park, see it. It is like looking into the face of God and him smiling back and saying, "You are my most wondrous creation."
But
yes, because out of all the people, it's frickin' Jesus that would be the one who made Troll in Central Park.
And on the first day, God created the troll in Central Park, and it was good, and he left it behind.
Can you see for a moment Stanley the Troll going, "Can't stop the feeling when you dance, dance, dance"?
Not really, because oddly enough, unlike the recent DreamWorks Trolls, you can argue that there is a bit of a timeless feel to a Troll in Central Park. You can watch it at any time and it would still feel the same. I mean, sure, you can argue about the kind of the style of how the kids dress up and look.
Yeah, especially with Gus's rat tail.
It's not trying to be it's not really trying to be a 90s movie.
Yeah, I could definitely see that because, you have that fantasy element with the trolls, and it's similar to what we were talking about NIMH, in which, it does, you have, the scientists doing all these experiments. You can kind of believe that something like this could happen. You could also kind of make the argument about, these supernatural creatures in a location that we're all familiar with, like Central Park. Maybe something like this could happen. Sure, I can definitely see that. And it can happen at any time, similar to if you were having a magical world similar to Neverending Story. But but there's a lot of problems with Troll in Central Park. I mean, you can definitely tell that Stanley Stanley is a massive coward. You really can't root for him because he feels, he can't really stand up against the bad guy. He's kind of like hiding away with his flowers. I think even Mars Girl said it best when she was discussing about the movie, in which she that Stanley kind of likes to play pretend in his little underground area while the kids are in danger with Gnorga and stuff like that. That he's too scared to fight for what he believes in. So you could definitely see that in this movie. The movie just doesn't have a plot. It's just like smiling flowers and songs with a little bit of a mixture with the bad guys.
That's supposed to be a thing. Is
The,
there a plot in this?
Not really,
Oh,
no.
yeah,
I mean, there's not really much of a plot. In fact, it shouldn't really exist because, I mean, you have, like, later in the movie in which when you have Rosie crying and then Gnorga sees, oh, there's a baby crying, she's so miserable. And then when when Rosie stops crying, she becomes really upset and then she finds out that Stanley is alive. It's like, why do you care that Stanley's still alive? He's banished from the Troll Kingdom. He's not a bother to you anymore. Just leave him alone. He's in the human world now. What does that matter? But there has to be a conflict somewhere. So she needs to make everything miserable.
I look at this film like so. Unlike Thumbelina, where everything was offensive to my senses to the nth degree. This is the film that I always look on in his reputation and say, it's harmless. It's not necessarily good. It's not even close to great. But I will say that I overall feel like this is him trying to be harmless. But it doesn't have much of a plot. All it has is cutesy animation, which I'm not gonna knock the animation here. I really can't. I don't think that the animation is all that bad. I like some of the usage of reference models. Especially with the kids, it all seems very natural. They are trying to capture a whimsical mood here. You do get a little bit of flavor of that. That's really all this movie has to offer. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just sort of, oh, this is cute. Let's sit here with the kids and watch. Let's watch the Keebler Elf.
I guess you're trying to say is that it's somewhere in the middle. It's harmless enough, but it just has no substance whatsoever.
Yeah, it's frothy.
Okay, fair enough.
I do kind of like the song Absolutely Green.
That's not a bad song, actually.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I just kind of find it hilarious, like, toward the end of the movie where he's making everything in New York green. I even like that joke that the Nostalgia Critic said, did you team up with Poison Ivy to make everything green? So, I do kind of find that funny. I mean, it's definitely a lot better than Gnorga's song.
Adam and Evil.
It's definitely a lot better than Gnorga's song, that's for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what was up with that? That is a little bit borderlining on the alternate ending to Little Shop of Horrors, where the plants take over the world. Yeah, that's the only part that I really question. Like, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so yeah, I guess not really much to say about this. Let's go into the final movie, what they consider to be Don Bluth's major downfall right before Fox Animation Studios, which is The Pebble and the Penguin.
Really? This movie is that hated?
Pebble and the Penguin? Well, from what I understand, Don Bluth was so embarrassed with this movie that he wanted to take his name off the credits.
Yeah, that is true.
I know that. I know that, but and I'm also aware about the whole sweatshop animation deal where everything is unfinished, or not everything is unfinished, but you get my idea.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Without knowing that you can't overlook some of the sequences where characters are just standing still and not moving. That's embarrassing, but that was all due to financial issues. I don't really put the blame on him there entirely. I will more so blame whoever thought it was a great idea to go ahead and rush this animation.
Trust me. Listen to the Animated Anarchy podcast where they talk about Pebble and the Penguin, and you will definitely hear some aspects about how the animation is so rushed and how the story is just so nonsensical that it just makes you wonder. Wow, I don't blame Don Bluth for wanting to take his name off the credits, but and it's kind of a sad way that this was his last movie right before doing Fox Animation Studios, but yeah, I mean, you have a character with a speech impediment similar to Edmund from Rock-a-doodle, except that it's Martin Short and he's more like stumbling with his words. Then you have Marina, who's just nothing more than the love interest. Then you have Drake, who's, let's be honest, he's a penguin version of Gaston.
With the biggest man boobs you'll ever see.
Hey, nerd.
Hey, nerd.
Yeah. So, yeah, everything is very cookie cutter here, but I still like this movie.
It's hard to really hate this. Like, there's obviously a lot of flaws, but it's not really bad per se.
It's just very generic. That's the problem. I mean, it's kind of sad. You go from Don Bluth, who was the main innovator behind animated features in the 80s and created some incredibly unique animation, had told stories in a way that had never been seen before, and now we concluded with this. A generic cookie-cutter animated feature that is just for kids only. And it's just kind of sad.
If you want a little bit more of a Disney comparison, I could actually draw that here. The numbers here do feel like again, I do enjoy, if not for the songs themselves, but to a certain degree, the attempt at spectacle. There is that motif here where they're trying to be Broadway shows with their songs, and that was something that the Disney formula mastered, maybe a little bit better. But in this film's particular case, even though it's being copious, I can still forgive those moments where it's definitely trying to feel like Broadway.
Yeah, and done by Barry Manilow of all people, and he also did the music for Thumbelina as well. But yeah, I mean, it's true that he's no James Horner, but the music in The Pebble and the Penguin is not awful, mind you. I mean, you have that song with Hubie and Marina, you have that song in the boat, you have Don't Make Me Laugh with Drake and Marina, you have the song with Hubie and Rocco, so there's some decent songs.
Looks like we get along together, looks like we're two peas in a pod. I really like that song. It's a good buddy song. There, it's got a nice little tempo there, and Martin Short can sing.
Yeah, he can sing. It's just too bad. It's just too bad that he can't do anything else good in this movie. Like, I'm not too crazy about the stumbling. It kind of slows down the pace because he has like a speech impediment. It just kind of drags his talking a little bit whenever he's speaking to a character.
I kind of like the speech impediment here because it sort of makes him look it gives him sort of an underdog beta male.
I think that's what they really tried to hone in onto Hubie, is that they really want to try him to be the geeky underdog, like the man you would least expect to like succeed in his goals and dreams, but you want him to succeed on it anyways.
Perfectly timed hiccup there.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, I think that my favorite things about this movie are Rocco and Drake, because at least they bring a lot of entertainment into the movie. And also another thing that I really like are the segments in which they're being chased by the sea lions and the whales. I thought that was really action-packed, and at least it was really entertaining and interesting.
Oh yeah, you can't say that there's a lack of effort here in trying to make something that's classy. That is, aside from the aforementioned lack of effort scenes that we launched into when mentioning this film. But yeah, there's a lot more of a genuine attempt at heart to this film than some of what the previous films did.
Yeah.
So this is not a classic by any means.
It tried more than the previous works.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely tried a lot more. At least it was trying to lean in toward the direction of being serious, but at the same time being funny. But I think that if it was a little bit more creative, then maybe it could have been an underrated classic. But just the way it is, there's some flaws that cannot be overlooked. And for that, it's okay.
In my heart, it's an underrated classic, but that's me.
Sure. But yeah, it's, I guess, I guess there's not really much to say. I guess this was, that is the last movie that was under the Sullivan Bluth Studios right before it led up into its bankruptcy around 95, which, I mean, I don't know. Do you think that if it would have stuck around a little bit more, do you think it could have competed against Toy Story?
No.
No.
Hell no.
No, even Amblimation couldn't do it when Balto was released shortly after Toy Story. So, yeah, I think that even if they were to stick around a little bit more, I don't think it would have competed against the likes of DreamWorks or Pixar around that time. And this was when Disney was, heading over to its second dark age. Yeah, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it right here. We'll have to continue our discussion of Anastasia, Bartok the Magnificent, and Titan AE in another podcast. So yeah, that is it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I actually got a request from someone to tackle in the Fox Animation Studios trilogy. Anastasia will be celebrating its 20th anniversary in November, so I'm going to save it for that time. And I would love it if the both of you guys will come back and we can continue this discussion.
Keep me in the loop.
Oh, we'll see what I got.
All right. So, yeah, I think we're done with this podcast. So, yeah, Matt, why don't you plug and promote your stuff?
Yes, okay. So I definitely talked about a lot of things related to Don Bluth, including going into the entire history of Don Bluth in a series of videos called Animation Look Back Don Bluth. So if you guys want to go and check out that and you want to learn more about the history of many animation studios and stuff like that, or if you want to see me talk about animation and animated films like with reviews and all that stuff, then you could go onto my YouTube channel, Electric Dragon 505, or you can follow me on Twitter at AniMat 505. I also got a Facebook page, and at the same time, you can also, if you really liked what I do and you want to go and support my work, I got a Patreon that you could go to, patreon.com/AniMat, so you could go there.
All right, and what do you got, James?
Well, of course, I can't say quite as much as Matt here in terms of animation because he is the expert. But I will say this: if you guys have seen me before, I'm still doing From Pages to Pictures on my YouTube channel, Jaimetud. I'm still doing my song covers. I'm still doing Bluebeat TV, which you can also find in the description box here. Just search for Bluebeat TV. I'm also on Patreon, patreon.com/Jaimetud, Jaimetud. And for limited time only, I am extending this offer to my patrons and anyone else listening out there. My next song cover is going to be the song cover for the DuckTales theme, which as of this year, as it is to mark the show's 30th anniversary, as well as to commemorate the reboot show that is coming up on August 12th. And for a limited time only, I'm letting all of my patrons take part in this theme song. There's a video for that on my channel. You can check that out. For $1 a video, you can be part of that. And we're just going to have some fun with this. I've already got some familiar faces lined up to be a part of it. I've shown you guys the linkage there, I believe. So yeah, just hook me up there, and hope to hear from you soon.
So yeah, guys, once again, thank you so much for coming on by for the podcast.
Absolutely,
no problem.
Alright, so that is it for this episode. Let us know in the comments below about your earliest memories watching a movie that was done by Don Bluth. Which is your favorite? Which is your least favorite? So yeah, like I said before, we will continue our discussion of Don Bluth's remaining movies in November when we go over the Fox Animation Studios trilogy, as requested by one of my followers online. We'll see you in November, but until then, we have plenty of more podcasts to keep you occupied until then. So yeah, hope to see you around soon. Thank you for listening.
Don't lose your way with each passing day. You've come so far, don't throw it away. Live believing, dreams are for weaving, wonders are waiting to start. Live your story, faith, hope, and glory. Hold to the truth in your heart. If we hold on together, I know our dreams will never die. Dreams see us through to forever, where clouds roll by. For you and I, souls in the wind must learn how to bend. Seek out a star, hold on to the end. Valley, mountain, there is a fountain, washes our tears all away. Words are swaying, someone is praying. Please let us come home to stay. If we hold on together, I know our dreams will never die. Dreams see us through to forever, where clouds roll by. For you